Hello everyone, I'm Dmitry with Canucks, and in this video we'll be going over the basics of B-rolling. I'll give you a few tips and tricks of some of the things that I keep in mind every time I turn on that camera, position my scene, and push that record button. So, I'm Dmitry, I'm on the unicycle. It's an awesome shirt, let's get with it. First shot of this review, the Silverstone RVZO2. Oh, that rhymed. Battery dead. So the first basic rule you have to understand is always think about perspective. When I say perspective, I mean the camera is on the same plane as the subject you're trying to film. Is it above the subject, looking down on the subject, or is it below it? And so each of those perspectives creates a very different effect in the way you're trying to present whatever you're trying to shoot. So for example, here's a shot of this case with the plane above the subject looking down, and it kind of reveals a lot of the background elements. It doesn't fully isolate the subject in this review from the background, and the foreground isn't totally isolated. Now here's the exact same shot with the exact same settings with the tripod lower, and now you're looking from the plane below the subject looking up, and it creates this very towering effect where the subject you're trying to highlight is very powerful looking, and it really works really well with cases and with any straight lines because you have this very interesting look, and so you could create different dynamics and whatever you're trying to highlight using this type of plane method, whether or not you're trying to be above it, below it, or in the center. And the center is very awesome as well, just to create your lines so that everything is straight, everything is in perspective, and nothing is in a skewed plane. That sometimes does not work at all for some shots. So always think about perspective, whether you want to be above it, on the same line as the subject, or below for that really towering look. The second thing to think about all the time when you're doing any type of B-rolling is the tools that you use. Do not overuse the tools, and also the settings. So right now I've set up my office in this T-shaped format, white desk. The screen should be on to give me a bit of extra light from there. Turn that light on over here, and basically I'm trying to capture as much as possible within this type of environment, and then I will actually change this up. I either move the desk over here or put it in that spot just because of the blue light that shines from the case. So always think about trying to change your environment, as otherwise, filming this entire case review in this T format for the viewers would be extremely boring. And now back to the tools. I don't even use the slider all the time. I only try to utilize some establishing shots, maybe a conclusion shot, maybe something for the cinematic intro that we do. But as you notice throughout the review, it is not being utilized all that often, just because I don't want every single shot to be a slide shot. I don't want every single shot to be a pan shot, and I don't want every single shot to be, some type of combination of using the tripod with the slider. So always try to think of a good balance in terms of giving yourself a nice slider effect, nice pan, nice tilt, whatever, and then try to balance out the motion versus static shots. So a good example of what I just said would be, for example, to do an opening slide shot, so there is motion, and then do a macro shot, so a change of the focal length of the lens. If you don't have different lenses, just maybe come closer to the subject and do the minimum focusing distance, so you have not only the perspective change, you also have the change of motion, so you are going from something that is dynamic to something that is static. And you notice that in my reviews all the time. I usually try to balance out a few motion shots and then put in a static shot, like a macro something. So if you're seeing a shot and the composition that you like, try to capture that in either a dynamic motion, so a pan, tilt, slider, whatever that you have available for create some type of motion, and then try to go in and do the exact same composition, slightly differently, but without movement. And then when you go back to edit, you have those two options to play with. You can choose one to go in the beginning of the review and the other one to go in the end of the review, or some combination of that, so that you don't overuse the footage too much, and you still have very unique shots throughout the entire video. Now, people are always curious about our slider shots. They become like the staple of Hard Rock Canucks style, and so the tip here is to be always consistent with the motion, so that in case you need to warp it later in the Premiere software or in any other video editing software, it's not as difficult and you won't get many artifacts. So if you do get a bad slide, delete that footage and just do it again. So this is a perfect example of talking about diverse shots. I have this here, it's a very wide angle, showing it the entire case in frame, and see nothing is cut out. And now let's do a tighter shot, just of the logo, which would reveal just a tiny bit of extra diversity in what I'm trying to showcase here. One of the most important aspects in terms of B-rolling is trying to think about your composition, always having that in the back of your mind. If you can enable the rule of thirds grid on your screen, on your camera, do it. It will help you try to center things. It will help you to correct for your perspective. If something is slightly skewed and it may not be as professional as what you could potentially make it, but also it comes down to practice and making sure that you like what you see. The way I usually do it is blast out some trance music as I film my reviews. That's why I'm sort of energized by whatever I'm listening to, and trying to also come up with some creative ideas in terms of how I want to showcase a product that I'm filming. So always think about your composition, and very important, don't try to be random. Sometimes random is great, but don't always try to be random. Don't just set up a camera and then do a slide or do a pan or whatever. Try to really think about your setting, try to visualize how everything in the background is located. Try to look in the entire frame and see if there's anything that needs to be removed from the shot. Sometimes I have little items in the frame that I'm like, crap, I wish I removed them, and I go back and remove that and do another shot. So just be not super random with your shots, set them up the way you like, because that way you'll be happy as an editor looking at those shots later when you're compiling your entire movie. And the last piece of the puzzle that I will give you guys before I head out is go wide. What I mean by that is try to utilize a wide field of view, so something that is not super zoomed in, because I see so many tech YouTubers that utilize macro a little bit too much, and you don't get the full sense of the object that you're trying to showcase, and sometimes you want to see the whole object. There's time and place for macro shots when you're trying to highlight any texture or certain little tiny elements on the object, and obviously that's important, but try not to overdo that, and actually that ties with the entire pattern or theme of this video. Try not to overdo any of the things that we talked about today. Not try to overdo your slides, don't overdo your pans. Try to see what is a good balance, what feels right within the final edit, and whatever makes you happy with the finished product. So I'm Dmitry with Hard Rock Canucks. I hope you enjoyed this behind the scenes of how I B-roll. So I hope you enjoy this content. Make sure to subscribe and follow for every behind the scenes and how-to videos for every Friday. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. They see me rolling, be rolling. I promised myself I wouldn't do that, but it's in there already.